The Romanovs ruled Russia for over 300 years, amassing wealth so vast it was incomprehensible to the average person. They controlled millions of hectares of land, vast reserves of gold and precious metals, and the labor of an entire nation. Their story is one of unparalleled opulence but also one of tragedy, as their unimaginable fortune became a symbol of their isolation from the struggles of the people they ruled. The Romanov dynasty began in 1613 with Mikhail Romanoff, a 16-year-old boy from a noble family chosen as Tsar to bring stability to a Russia torn apart by civil war and foreign invasions. What started as a desperate solution to a crisis laid the foundation for one of history's most powerful and wealthy dynasties, shaping Russia's future over the next 3 centuries. The Romanovs' rise to prominence was deeply tied to Russia's immense natural resources. Under their rule, the empire expanded eastward into Siberia, unlocking vast reserves of gold, diamonds, and furs. Siberian resources became a cornerstone of their wealth, bringing immense revenue from trade and exploitation. By the 18th century, under visionary leaders like Peter the Great and Catherine the Great, Russia transformed into a global superpower. These rulers modernized the country, strengthened its military, and fostered a culture of opulence, causing the Romanovs' fortune to grow exponentially. By the 19th century, the Romanovs governed a sprawling empire that covered nearly 10% of the Earth's landmass, stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean. In modern terms, their empire was valued at over $300 billion, making them one of the richest dynasties in history. Their wealth funded grand palaces like the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, lavish balls, and vast art collections that showcased their power and sophistication to the world. The Romanovs used their immense wealth not just to live in luxury but to project their power and authority to the world. Their palaces were grand statements of imperial majesty, designed to inspire awe and reinforce their divine right to rule. The Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, with its 1,500 lavishly decorated rooms adorned with gilded ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and priceless art, was a masterpiece of opulence. Nearby, the Peterhof Palace stood as the Russian Versailles, featuring 173 fountains, many covered in gold, that dazzled visitors with their sheer extravagance and engineering brilliance. Their love for luxury extended to commissioning exquisite creations, including the world-famous Fabergé eggs. These jeweled masterpieces, crafted by Peter Carl Fabergé, were given as special Easter gifts to members of the royal family. Each egg was unique, filled with intricate surprises and symbolism. The imperial coronation egg, one of the most famous, celebrated Tsar Nicholas II's coronation and is now valued at over $30 million, a testament to the dynasty's obsession with wealth and grandeur. While these treasures impressed the nobility and foreign dignitaries, they became symbols of access to the struggling masses. To Russia's peasants and workers, who lived in poverty and endured harsh taxes, such displays of luxury were infuriating reminders of the stark divide between the imperial family and the people. The Romanovs' incredible wealth came at a heavy cost to the people who made it possible. Most of their fortune was built on the relentless labor of peasants, who represented over 80% of Russia's population. These workers toiled for long hours, often in harsh and unforgiving conditions, to provide the resources and taxes that supported the royal family's extravagant lifestyle. These taxes financed military campaigns, territorial expansions, and the luxurious lifestyles of the imperial family. Despite their hard work, most peasants lived in poverty, barely able to feed their families or survive the brutal Russian winters. Meanwhile, the Tsar and his court lived in unparalleled luxury, hosting dazzling balls in ornate palaces and dining on meals served with gold-plated tableware. The divide between the rulers and the ruled widened with every passing generation, creating a society where the elite lived in splendor while the majority suffered in silence. By 1913, during the Romanovs' grand 300th anniversary celebrations, this divide was on full display. The royal family commemorated the milestone with lavish parades, feasts, and displays of wealth, while a typical peasant family struggled to survive on less than 50 rubles a year. This income was barely enough to cover basic needs, leaving many peasants in constant hardship. These extravagant celebrations became a bitter reminder of the inequality that defined Russia, fueling growing resentment among the people. Revolutionary ideas gained momentum during the 19th century, driven by the stark contrast between the monarchy's opulence and the poverty of the masses. While the monarchy's grip on power was reinforced through this wealth, the heavy burden placed on ordinary Russians sowed seeds of discontent that would eventually lead to their downfall. Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, ascended the throne in 1894, inheriting not only an unimaginable fortune but also a nation on the brink of collapse. While the Romanovs were among the wealthiest families in the world, controlling vast resources and lands, the empire itself was unstable. Nicholas clung to the belief in autocracy, ruling with absolute power and resisting calls for reform even as waves of change swept across Europe. Movements for democracy, industrialization, and social justice were reshaping other nations, but Nicholas refused to adapt, leaving Russia stuck in the past. By 1913, Nicholas and his family were controlling an income equal to $9 billion today. Yet 80% of the population lived in deep poverty. Most Russians worked long hours in factories or on farms for meager wages, struggling to make ends meet. Instead of addressing these growing social issues, Nicholas funneled money into ambitious projects like expanding Russia's military and completing the Trans-Siberian Railway. While these projects boosted Russia's prestige, they did little to help the average citizen and left many feeling abandoned by their ruler. Nicholas's isolation from his people only deepened as he retreated further into his family life and courtly luxuries. His failure to connect with or understand the struggles of his subjects set the stage for unrest. The Romanovs were seen as out of touch and indifferent to the growing pressures of modernity, creating a widening gap between the monarchy and the people that would prove impossible to bridge. World War I marked the beginning of the Romanovs' final collapse. Nicholas II believed the war would rally the nation around the monarchy, restoring faith in his rule. Instead, it became a catastrophic drain on both the country's resources and its people. The war effort cost Russia over 1.5 billion rubles, equivalent to $30 billion today, and the toll on human lives was devastating. Millions of Russian soldiers were killed, wounded, or taken prisoner, leaving families shattered and farms abandoned. At home, the war created severe food shortages and skyrocketing inflation, plunging ordinary Russians into deeper poverty. Bread lines stretched for hours, and riots broke out in cities as people fought to survive. The Romanov government, overwhelmed by the scale of the crisis, struggled to manage the chaos. Nicholas's decision to personally take command of the army in 1915 only made matters worse. It left him responsible for military failures while also creating a power vacuum in the government, which his wife, Empress Alexandra, was left to fill. Her reliance on the controversial mystic Rasputin further eroded public trust in the monarchy. Despite the nation's suffering, the Romanovs continued to live in luxury, seemingly untouched by the sacrifices demanded of their people. This indifference fueled anger and alienation. By 1917, strikes and protests had escalated into revolution, forcing Nicholas to abdicate. The financial strain of the war, combined with the Romanovs' failure to connect with their people or address their suffering, brought an end to the dynasty that had ruled Russia for over 3 centuries. By 1917, Russia was in chaos. Years of war, poverty, and inequality had pushed the empire to its breaking point. The Russian Revolution erupted, and Tsar Nicholas II was forced to give up the throne. His abdication marked the end of more than 300 years of Romanov rule. The royal family, Nicholas, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children, was placed under house arrest. The Romanovs' wealth, once thought untouchable, was quickly taken by the Bolsheviks. Their grand palaces, filled with priceless art and gold, were stripped of their treasures and repurposed as government buildings or museums. Items like the famous Fabergé eggs, jewels, and luxurious furniture were sold abroad to raise money for the new government. Personal belongings of the family, worth billions in today's money, were seized and used to fund the Bolsheviks' plans for revolution and war. In July 1918, the Romanovs were sent to a house in Siberia, where their lives came to a tragic end. Fearing that loyalists might try to rescue them, the Bolsheviks made a brutal decision. Nicholas, Alexandra, and their children were executed in a basement. This act not only marked the end of the Romanov dynasty but also symbolized the violent break with Russia's imperial past. Even after their tragic deaths, the Romanovs' immense wealth remains a source of fascination and mystery. Tales of hidden treasures and lost fortunes have kept their story alive for over a century. One of the most famous legends is about a train packed with gold, jewels, and other valuables. During the revolution, loyalists are said to have sent the train into Siberia to keep it out of Bolshevik hands. But somewhere in the vast wilderness, it vanished and was never found. The Romanovs even carried their riches with them to their deaths. After their execution, soldiers discovered diamonds and emeralds sewn into the clothing of the daughters, hidden as a desperate attempt to preserve the family's wealth. There are also persistent rumors that the Romanovs had millions hidden in secret Swiss bank accounts, deposited before the revolution. Despite countless investigations, no evidence of these accounts has ever surfaced. To this day, much of the Romanov fortune remains unaccounted for, adding to the enduring mystery of their legacy. The story of the Romanovs is a powerful reminder of how extreme wealth and isolation can cause rulers to lose touch with their people. Their treasures, what remains of them, are now displayed in museums like the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, drawing millions of visitors every year. These relics serve as a window into the splendor and excess of Imperial Russia, but much of the Romanov fortune is still unaccounted for. What wasn't seized by the Bolsheviks might still be hidden in secret locations, waiting to be discovered. The legends of lost trains and Swiss bank accounts continue to capture imaginations, keeping their story alive in the modern world. The Romanovs' wealth helped them build one of history's greatest empires. Yet, it also created a divide between them and their people that proved impossible to bridge. In the end, all their gold and riches couldn't save them from the revolution or their own missteps. Their story is one of immense power, dazzling luxury, and ultimate tragedy, a dynasty that shone brightly but crumbled under the weight of its own extravagance. This is Finance Through Time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories of wealth, power, and the lessons they leave behind.